So today we're in section 3.1, solving two-step equations. In chapter 2, we solved one-step equations. Now, starting in chapter 3, we're going to solve two-step equations. The good news is that my two fundamental concepts are still the same. I need to do inverse operations, that's my first one, and I do them to accomplish isolating the variable, which is concept number 2. I need to isolate the variable on one side of the equation. So the first equation I want you to write on your notes is 3x plus 7 equals negative 5. 3x plus 7 equals negative 5. I have this equation written down. All right, so the first thing you need to think of, and I want you to write this in your notes, you need to move what is not connected to the variable first. Move what is not, you should be writing this down, connected to the variable first. And you can like write not in all caps or highlight it or underline it. What is not connected to the variable. So what term in this equation is not connected to the variable? Positive 7 or 7. Yes, very good. So I need to move 7 to the other side first. Well, since it's positive, I must do the inverse. Subtract 7. Here's where, again, it's really important that you don't make just these simple, small mistakes. We see a subtraction sign here, and sometimes we might think, well, I need to subtract those numbers. That's not necessarily the case because it's negative 5 minus 7. It's same sign. You actually need to add their absolute values and keep the negative. All right? Now you bring down the 3x from the other side because your 7's canceled. You see that? So step 1, this is why it's called a two-step equation. Step 1 is to move what's not connected to the variable. Step 2 is to now isolate the variable. How would we get x by itself?
Divide it by 3.
Divide both sides by 3. X equals negative 4. All right, but we're not done because we need to check. We check two-step equations the exact same way we check one-step equations. All right, now you can do this in your calculator. All right, definitely take advantage of the fact that you're allowed to use your calculator. 3, just put it in your calculator, times negative 4 plus 7, and hit the equal sign. What do you get?
Negative 5.
So negative 5 equals negative 5, and it checks out. All right, so we check it the same way, substitution, and then show that both sides equal. I want you to do B. Go ahead and do B. All right. So now we have 4y plus 2 equals 22. What did you do first? What did you do first? Subtract 2 from both sides. Move what's not connected to the variable. Did you write 4y equals 20? So then what did you do?
Divide by 4.
Divide both sides by 4. Y equals?
5.
Who got 5? Okay, good. Plug 5 back in. Can we do this in our head? 4 times 5 is 20 plus 2 is 22. So we know it works out. And that's really where I want you guys to get, okay, to, is the point where you come up with your answer y equals 5, and it's like an instinct. It's just a habit for you to take the y equals 5 and plug it back in. And really, I want you to be able to get to the point where you check it using mental math. So your homework asks you to check it by writing it out, but I want you to get to the point where you can do it in your head. All right, moving on to example 2. In example 2, I just have different operations. That's it. So in the first one, multiplication was connected to my variable. Now what operation is connected to my variable?
Division.
Division, all right? And then addition was connected to my number that stands alone, and now it's subtraction. So no big deal. All right, I just have x over 2 minus 3 equals 1. So I still move what's not connected to the variable first, and then I do inverse operation to get that variable by itself. Go ahead and see if you can start this one. What do you do first? What do you do first? Just tell me. What do you do first?
Add 3 on
You add 3 to both sides. Very good. So now do you have x over 2 equals 4?
Yes.
Okay. And then what do you do to both sides?
Divide by 2.
Wait, don't divide by 2, but you multiply by 2. Who got x equals 8? Who got x equals 8? All right, so can we do this in our head? What's 8 divided by 2?
4.
4. What's 4 minus 3?
1.
1 equals 1. Done. All right, go ahead and do B. When you're done, raise your hand. I'm going to come check. All right, so we add 6 to both sides first. Y over 4 equals 11. And what do I do to both sides now? Multiply both sides by 4 to get 44. Who got 44? 44, good. All right, we're not done. We have to go back and check. Again, we could do this in our head. 44 divided by 4 is what? 11 minus 6 is 5, and it checks out. All right, so that's it for example 2. Now, in example 3, what does it say next to example 3? Solving an equation with what kind of coefficient? Negative coefficients. Well, what's a coefficient? I remember that term. Okay, so it's in a term with the variable. So here's my coefficient, right? Which number in this term, negative 4y, is my coefficient?
Negative 4.
Negative 4 is my coefficient. So it's negative. So that's just what I have to be mindful of when I'm solving these equations. So my first one is 7 minus 4y equals 19. 7 minus 4y equals 19. And my rule is still the same. I need to move what's not connected to the variable first, which is what number?
7.
It's 7. 7 is positive, so how do I get rid of it? I gotta subtract it. Very good. Subtract 7 from both sides. Now I want you to rewrite the equation. Once your 7's cancel, what would you have left? Go ahead and rewrite your equation. All right, so did you write negative 4y equals 12? Did you bring down the negative? So that's the common mistake here that we see. This negative 4y, it's all one term. So when I bring it down, I have to remember the negative. That changes everything. Because now when I solve for y, what am I going to divide both sides by? Negative 4. Both sides, and my answer is negative 3. Who got negative 3? Anybody get negative 3 before me? Good. All right, and guess what? We solve it the same way. But again, we have to be mindful of our signs, because how could we start off with a 7 and end up with a 19 when we have all these negatives in between?
Double negative.
It's 2 negatives. I'm multiplying 2 negatives together, which makes a positive. 7 plus 12, yes, is 19. And again, if you use your calculators and you put in those signs correctly, it'll produce the answer of 19. Okay, so it will work that out correctly as long as you put in your signs correctly. All right, go ahead and do B. When you have your answer, raise your hand. I'm going to come check. All right, so we have 12 minus 2y equals 18. Subtract 12 from both sides. Now divide both sides by negative 2, and y equals negative 3. And again, multiplying 2 negatives gives me a positive, so 12 plus 6 does equal 18, so it checks out. All right, so that's how we solve an equation with negatives. Go ahead and turn in your books to page 120. We're going to read a word problem about purchasing a drum set and how we could figure out basically a payment plan based on that information. Okay, so here's what it says. It says you're buying a drum set that costs $495. The music store lets you make a down payment. You can pay the remaining cost in 3 equal monthly payments with no interest charged. You make a down payment of $150. How much is each monthly payment? All right, so every equation starts with a
Equal sign.
equal sign. Every equation also has a
Variable.
total and a variable, but a total. The total, it doesn't take any type of mental effort at all. All right, I just need to read the problem, and what does it say my total is? $495. Okay, so now I need to figure out how I can piece the other information together. In these types of problems, there's going to be a number that's just a fixed value that's not going to be affected by the variable. What would my fixed value amount be from this problem? And yes, it's the down payment. The down payment does not have any reflection on my monthly payments. Well, not directly, at least. Okay, it's a $150 down payment. So it's not affected by any other value. So $150, okay, is separate. Now, how many payments did it say that we can make? 3 equal monthly payments. So here's what I have to figure out. We talked about this yesterday. If I'm making 3 equal monthly payments, I don't know how much the payment is. This is where my combination of 3 and a variable come into play. So now I have to ask myself, am I multiplying them? Am I dividing them in the equation? Okay. So we talked about yesterday how, when we read a problem, we can most of the time figure out what we need to do to solve. So for example, if I told you that they had, let's say $300 left and it was split into 3 equal payments, how much money would it be for each payment? If they owed $300 and it was 3 equal payments, how much would each payment be? $100. Okay, what did you do to solve that? You divided. So if you have to divide the remaining amount by how many payments there are, if you have to divide to get to your answer, what needs to be in your equation?
A variable.
Multiplication. 3x. All right, so you need to divide the remaining amount by 3 to figure out the payments. Since you need to divide, your equation has to show multiplication. You see how that works? Okay, so figuring out you need to divide usually is a little easier. How do you get to your answer? Then you can kind of backtrack to plug it in. So now we just subtract 150 from both sides. This is the easy part. Get 345. We divide by 3 both sides, and our monthly payments are $115. All right, so 3 equal payments of $115 gets me to a balance paid in full. Okay, so the last thing that we need to cover isn't technically an example from your book, but you have 2 questions on your homework tonight that basically ask you to translate the verbal sentence into an equation and solve. These are going to translate into 2-step equations. We've already done this for 1-step equations. All right, so the first thing I want you to look for is what word in here is your equal sign?
7.
No, your equal sign is. So go ahead, you would highlight it or circle it. This divides the sentence into each side, basically what would go on each side of the equal sign. That is. Wherever is, okay, that's where my equal sign would go. So what information comes after is? That's the easy part. So 7 comes after the equal sign. Now, everything else comes before the equal sign. 5 minus the product of 2 and a number. That's a lot of words, but I need to find my keywords that would tell me what operation I'm dealing with. 5 minus, how would you write that?
5.
5 and a minus sign. 5 minus, okay? So we write it how we read it. All right? The product of 2 and a number. What does product mean?
2.
Multiplication. And I insert it where I see the word and. How do I write multiplication between 2 and a number?
2 in the variable.
2x. 2n. Whatever variable you choose, just write them together. 2x. Okay? Now we have a 2-step equation. Go ahead and solve it. So what do we do first? Subtract 5 from both sides. Negative, did you remember negative 2x?
Yes.
Equals to, divide both sides by negative 2. X equals negative 1. All right, who got negative 1? So 2 problems like that on your homework tonight. That should be everything you need to know for 3.1.